Okay, people, I have a little bit of time here. I said I was going to do this. Now, this is for, as you can see, this is an update from November 1st, 2021, British Columbia, Canada. I don't know what time it is. It's November 2nd. I'm doing this before I start my day. So what time is it? It is 6:15 a.m. in the morning on November 3rd. I thought it was November 2nd. How the heck did I lose a day, people? But I did. Anyway, we're going to listen to this, and I'm going to make comment on it, okay? I never got to finish the whole thing. I only got up into, oh, I don't know, somewhere around in here, right? But besides that point, hold on.
The COVID-19 pandemic in British Columbia, so you can expect that on Thursday.
Okay, just remember, I've been into contact with 7 strangers in a public environment that's had people go through it all day, every day.
Thank you very much.
For hours and hours on end.
So today we're going to share latest on a number of issues around the public health response and vaccinations for COVID-19. And as the Minister says, on Thursday we'll be providing a modeling and epidemiology update as well, so people are aware of where we are.
It kind of makes me wonder if I and my family are that controlled study. Right?
People have noticed.
This is under the Fair Use Act, okay?
Last week we were doing some updating and clarifying of provincial health orders, and one of those was updating the PHO order on mask wearing in indoor public places. And
it takes up
so much space, the importance of the layers of protection that we have, and how masks are one of those important layers. We need to continue to use masks.
Okay, well, when she says that, it makes me think that, you know, you have to ask yourself, why are they trying to impair the hippocampus of millions of people? The hippocampus, I don't know if it's an organ, if it's a gland, but what it does is it receives short-term information in terms of storing it in the short-term part of the brain that processes that information through sleep and then logs it into the brain for long-term storage and future access if need be. They're impairing the first stage of that information going into the brain and then being processed and then redirected to other parts of the brain to store it for long-term memory. Okay? Depriving the hippocampus of oxygen for any length of time, right, impairs the brain and its various parts. And the hippocampus is one of those parts, which is actually a 2-part process within brain function and how it stores memory and information.
All of our indoor public spaces, at gatherings and events and at schools, and that order remains in place.
Just remember, I'm holding the camera.
And the requirement and the order will be in place until we've determined that we're at a place where the risk of spreading COVID-19 has been significantly reduced. So this
You're supposed to have a better zoom.
The order and clarifies where masking is required, particularly in some of the clarifying some of the issues around events and gatherings and how important it is now that we've increased capacity in many of those events and gatherings.
They asked me who my family doctor was. Okay? And they pulled out my family doctor's name, and I, you know, to send the files of Amari to the family doctor, right? And they mentioned my family doctor, and I said, yes. I'm like, who else? Who else am I going to have those files sent to, people? That's the camera. That's the camera's inability to stay focused. Okay? That's the camera doing that. That's not me. you can see that this camera is somewhat defective. Do you see this? It doesn't work like my other camera. Okay, so that's with the zoom on. Let's take out the zoom and let's try it without the zoom and see what happens. Will it do the same thing? I'm just going right up. Sometimes these newer cameras, stuff like this, they build in filters. That's why cell phones can't pick up Project Bluebeam very well, because they have filters built right into the phone. Where the older camcorders can pick up Project Bluebeam light spectrums. Okay? I'm just saying. As I'm thinking about this bathroom that I walked into in the hospital, like seriously, the light spectrum was just way off the roof, people. The minute I walked in, I seen it. You see, this is why it takes so long to do these things, because I end up talking about shit, right? But the light spectrum was blinding, like literally. And I don't know anything about microwaves, but the intensity of the lighting, I just call it the light spectrum, and how piercing it was when you actually tried to look at to see what you were looking at, and it was very piercing to obviously nerves in the eyes, right? I'm trying to think what could possibly do that outside of maybe a microwave of some kind. I don't know what produces light. I don't know how lights are produced per se. I don't know what the scale is of the light spectrum, or how energy can affect that outside of you got energy running through a copper wire and it plugs into a light bulb and then it makes the light bulb shine, right? I mean, what would make something glare? How much energy would you need to go through to get to the bulb to make it glare versus shine? There's a difference. I'm just wondering. I have to clean out this computer because these files on MP4s just suck up the hard drive. Yeah. I'm almost tempted to go back to my old camera just to, I don't know.
That masks be a part of.
I do have a different camera here that's older that actually I haven't even used it yet. I'm going to see if I can pull that up. The only benefit that I see from using an MP4 is you get the whole screen versus a smaller resolution frame if you're using an older camera and converting into an MOV versus an MP4.
Of how we continue to safely get through this next phase of the pandemic.
How can she possibly say that, people? Okay, let's face it. Like, seriously, how can she safely? I go out with my family with what's left of it. Okay, I like to always throw that in there as a reminder as to what's happened to my family. Okay. Right? The majority of them children now, right? Mentioned that before. And honestly, people, I experienced no fear to face whatever it was that we were, or I was, to face in a hospital setting in relation to what this individual is trying to present to me. I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it, in a snake bottle. Snake oil bottle? Because whatever she is trying to say is completely contradictory to what I just went through. Okay? I'm living proof of that. Right? And clearly those people that were bum rushing me in that hospital room, not that they were bum rushing me, but when you think about it, for everybody being so fucking paranoid, why was everybody gathering and hovering around and showing no anxiety towards whatever this individual is trying to suggest that everybody should feel? Okay?
I also want to mention
Oh boy.
that while not under the order specifically, I want to highlight the importance of wearing masks in faith services.
Okay, we're just going to go through this, okay? I'll stop it. I'll upload. Maybe I'll follow up. I don't know, all right? This could be a 5-hour video. When my landlords offered to help me with my eyes, right? And ultimately, I ended up asking them to help me get a lawyer. And if they can't help me get a lawyer, then, ask around. Ask around with your friends and family and, at church. I said, ask at church, right? And my landlady said, well, we don't go, right? We just don't go to church. Like temples, they don't go to the temples because in part of what this individual and her crew has been doing to the general population, and just for whatever reason, they're not going, okay? And which is really sad, people, because they're elderly, 81, 82 years old, and they can't be at the temple when they spent, oh God, at least 98% of their life in the temple with the people, right? I'm not saying 24/7, but it was and is a huge instrumental part in their daily living. And if they're not going to church, to the temple, wherever, right, at this point in their life, oh my God, I can only imagine the turmoil that they're feeling inside themselves at being that they've been so disconnected from, it's one of those staples in life, right? It's like a food staple, right? They're being deprived of a nutrient that helps to keep them viable. Speaking of that, I spoke to my landlady yesterday, and I'm telling you people, she sounded sick again. I'm so angry. So today she's coming for the rent because she has to pay her mortgage, right? I gave her the good news. The water tank is fixed. It was a straight exchange. It ran smooth, and I'm so far pretty impressed, okay? That just had to fill out the paperwork and make sure that the warranty was in place. It was worth the wait for 10 days. Let's just put it that way. Okay? At least now I can rest in peace. And if for some reason it acts up, all I have to do is call my landlady and it will be fixed. But as it is right now, it's running in tip-top shape. So, being that my landlady is sick, I'm going to give her some of this today. But I'm going to give it in the whole star. I'm not going to give it to her ground, although I probably should. I'm going to give her a little bit in a bag ground, and I'm going to tell her to have whatever favorite cheese she likes. I don't know what she likes, but she likes something. I'm going to tell her to put 1 or 2 of these cloves with maybe 1 or 2 cloves, whole cloves, in her tea and let it seep for a little bit, and then just have 1 or 2 cups a day. Maybe that will help to soothe her upper chest. And because she's got chest infection, she's got something going on in her chest. I can hear it, people. And then, of course, the itchy throat or whatever that she's experiencing, it makes it worse, right? And I'm going to write down nebulizer. I'm going to tell her to go off and buy a nebulizer if she doesn't already have one, and maybe try that at home. And maybe talk to her doctor to see if her doctor can give her a little bit of medicine if she doesn't already have one. Okay? That's what I'm going to do today when I pay rent. I'm going to give her some of this stuff. I'm going to give it to her in whole, and I'm going to tell her to go buy a nebulizer and go see her doctor, and maybe her doctor will give her a mild medication for the nebulizer. Otherwise, she can just use saline. Because as it is, people, I'm telling you, okay, I mean, as hardy as she is, and that's one thing Punjabis are, I don't want to say famous for, but definitely good for. Like, they're elderly, they're robust, okay? You know, I've been around them for a long, long, long time. And, you know, they take care of their health. They were walking and they're doing and they're moving. And you go back to the little house. And what was Grandpa doing out there? Dad, remember Dad? Right? The elderly Punjabi man, Tawinder's dad. We used to call him Dad. Well, he was out there working like he was 30. Okay? No, something's not right here, people. Okay? I don't want to go on that rant.
We have developed in partnership with many faith leaders across the province guidance for faith services and how to...
What the hell is a faith service? If she's talking about something online, like, again, there's one of those asinine situations, especially when you're dealing with people that have grown up in an environment, they're, you know, throughout, right, has, like I said, church, the temple, for a lot of people is like a staple. It's like water, right? Without water, you can't survive, right? So is the face, whatever she's talking about here, is that just mist, right? Instead of getting a cup of water, you'll be able to gather up a few drops. Is that what we're talking about here?
Safely have faith services during this period of
Is she saying faith or face?
time, and it becomes even more important that this guidance is followed as we're heading into respiratory season. We have seen transmission of COVID-19 in faith gatherings, and in some cases that has meant that those gatherings have had to go remote. And certainly in the northern health area where we have increased transmission in communities, we've gone to all remote faith services.
The only people who have that documentation is the government. I don't think too many public members in their community have access to that information. So whatever she's telling you, you know, again, in the past, I've said there's nothing there to show you legitimately those statistics. Okay. For all we know, this could be another pre-recorded live stream, restreamed, you know, 9 days after the fact, 5 days after the fact, 2 days after the fact, up to 16 days after the fact, okay?
Services for now. This is especially important as we move into the colder winter months and spend more time indoors, and as we start to enter the full respiratory season. Last year, as many people know, was the result of our high level of influenza immunization combined with the precautions that we have been taking. We had no influenza cases. This year, we have already started to see influenza here in the province and other respiratory illnesses. But just last week, we had our first confirmations of influenza A here in BC. So this just reminds us how important it is to continue to take these levels of precautions.
They've criminalized being human. I've said this before, people. They have criminalized being human. They have criminalized being a living organism that comes into contact with other organisms and then coexists within an environment that's been around for millions and billions of years. Okay? They have criminalized the life process of human beings from birth until death by contorting what it means to be a biological, organic, living, breathing, functioning human being.
Particularly in indoor settings. And I also remind people that it is time to get your influenza
Why is her voice cracking?
vaccination, and that this is available particularly.
Jump to the chase.
particularly through pharmacies across the province. It is also important, as we head into this respiratory season in great depth, that not to lose sight of the fact that when we go somewhere, we bring...
My landlady suffers from her respiratory season month after month after month after month. We're going into months here, people. I don't know how much longer my landlady is going to be able to survive if she can't turn around whatever is attacking her immune system. Because clearly it's her immune system that is faltering here, okay? I have never known my landlady to be sick, first of all. That's the first thing. Never mind being sick repetitively to the point where you can clearly hear it and you can clearly see it. And it fails to abide in terms of going away. If anything, when she talked to me on the phone yesterday, she sounded worse than I've ever heard her sound before. Okay? And this is not something that's just starting. This is something that's been going on now for quite a few months. Why, people? Well, I have my opinion on that, right?
That risk with us. And COVID-19 can be the unwanted package that comes with us. So the restrictions we have in place and the actions we take as individuals are not only about protecting ourselves and those we are closest to, but also protecting those in our community and reducing the impact on our healthcare system.
They can't guilt trip me into trying to prop up a failing healthcare system, people. A failing healthcare system that's clearly being manipulated to fail at a faster rate, okay? As it breaches the trust of the general public en masse, okay? Through I don't want to say malicious duty of care, but yeah, kind of, right? Because of the abuse that's being perpetrated within the system itself under the actions of the workers that feel compelled to follow the rules, right? In order just to be able to retain their employment so that they don't face homelessness and complete bankruptcy. Not to mention the ostracization of their, I don't want to say decision to not comply, but, you know,
system, which, as we know, is very stretched around the province.
I wonder why. Okay, I don't know how long I can do this for without making comment because, you know, I walk the talk here, people. I was at the hospital 2 days ago with my whole family. Okay, it wasn't the hospital's fault and it wasn't our fault. We tried to find a babysitter. We couldn't. Okay, so, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm like asking myself right now, like, I wonder if those workers really understood in terms of like getting in touch with the good old days like it used to be before all this happened for them in the workplace versus mutating into what they have become and into what they are becoming as they're being influenced by high-powered light spectrums that can literally blind you if you look at them at the wrong way. What could possibly do that, people? What kind of energy is going through those lights in order to make them worse than a fucking spotlight? Okay? I mean, I could do a science experiment and I could go downstairs and turn on my spotlights and look at them and see if my eyes pierce to the degree like they did in that washroom. I was only in that hospital for one day for a short period of time. I only went into that washroom once. Could you imagine if that lighting system is in each and every washroom and those workers that are already being abused because it's an abusive workforce? Okay. Now, whether these individuals as a whole workforce all agree with being sadistic and masochists at the same time, I don't know. All I know is that forcing people to be doing what they've been doing, and clearly I was there, I seen it, right? Little children, little babies wearing fucking masks with mom holding on for dear life, don't know what to think as she's being expected to sit by herself in a fucking corner, right? And then be walked off into a room to God knows what you're gonna face because you only get to see half of it. And we already know that there's red flags in there because there's a whole lot of targeting going on because the mission isn't about providing quality health care to the patient anymore under that duty of care. The mission is to sell them the snake oil even before they go through the fucking door, like with me. Okay? With that woman, well, you know, two kinds come in, and the ones that haven't been, you know, inoculated do worse. Well, where's your statistics? How do you know that 100%? Maybe in this hospital for the little bit that you do see or the little bit you do hear, but out in the larger world, that information is debatable, right? You know? And then fail to acknowledge that there are alternative when it comes to treatment to alleviate symptoms so that the body can build natural immunity against whatever it is that they're being infected with, whether it's man-made in terms of, you know, maybe the lighting system, maybe being exposed to that kind of lighting system over a long period of time heightens whatever it is that, you know, is like, are they... I'm thinking, did they have those lights in there to like an info ray to you know, like when my kids used to work at McDonald's, be right in the beginning, my kids were serving 2,000 homeless people. Oh, sorry, they were serving 2,000 people a day on an 8-hour shift, where 1,000 of those people were homeless, and in those days, a lot of homeless people actually considered that McDonald's to be their only home and proceeded to congregate in large numbers at that McDonald's, and that brought in dysfunction where certain individuals would go into the washrooms and they would do their drugs in the washrooms or smear feces around or whatever, depending on who was going in. And so eventually they brought in a lighting system, some kind of a infrared system to pick up blood, right? To you know, just determine if somebody had been sitting in a stall and, you know, was injecting blood and it. How do we know that these lighting systems in these hospitals that are so damn bright that are ready to knock you off your feet aren't radiating something more than just light? Or maybe they're highlighting something like your DNA or something. I'm just saying. Being that technology seems to be fueling a lot of this, right? I mean, how can you possibly call it a healthcare system when it makes you feel sick? When you go into it and almost immediately you're made to feel sick because you have to, one, wear this, which kills off the hippocampus, right? Which brings in brain fog, which creates psychological problems over a period of time, almost immediately, right? Which, you know, rewrites the brain in terms of what's normal and what's not normal, right? As it hinders the brain from taking in information and being able to process it correctly. So that makes it abusive, right? I'm just using what we're talking about here. But when you take it out to every other environment where, you know, it's labeled quote unquote public,
With this in mind, I want to remind everybody
Listen.
that it is now a requirement for visitors at any of our acute care facilities across the province to be fully vaccinated.
you see, this is what they're going to do with me with Amari. For all I know, they could just be stalling for time until we get to this point where they're going to tell me I can't go in and see my own grandson after their surgery because I'm not vaccinated, inoculated, right? And because this individual put the order in, like she's putting an order in right now with the elderly, that's it, people. That's it. And then what happens to Amari is he becomes the specimen to carry on with whatever it is that these individuals are doing under the guise of public health and serving the public. Okay? And because our court system is corrupt, of course, anytime I present myself in front of a judge, whether it's in provincial court or whether it's in federal court, right? It's going to be that pre-scripted play the minute I walk through the door, just like with what happened with that woman with the, well, didn't we meet before? Where did I see you from? Where have we met before? I don't know. Well, I guess if I had to think about it, let me look at you, even though I don't have my glasses on, and you have a fucking face mask on. Well, I guess if you really want an answer, you're the lady who did the cast. Like, why? Why is she trying to distract me from paying attention to staying focused on what they're trying to do to my grandson? Why is she making me think about who she is when in fact she plays an insignificant role in what's being put forward when it regards surgery? Okay? There was no reason for that woman to be there, people, outside of a distraction and to distract me to focus on something that was completely insignificant. That's abusive. Okay, they turned it into some kind of socialization, like the good old days, you know, no worries, be happy. But when the rubber met the road, you know, it all depends on the rules as to how my family will be respected with our decisions to make our own choices in regards to local autonomy, in regards to the body, right? I don't want to go in circles on it, but I am.
I know that we have guidelines and provisions are, of course, made for parents of children, for people who are pregnant, and for people in palliative care. But additional precautions will also be needed in those cases, and our protections must be end-to-end to provide maximum protection for people receiving care, to healthcare workers, and to those caring for all of us.
I still have no fear of my contact with those 7 individuals that were complete strangers that have been coming into with stranger contact for months on end on a daily basis for every hour that they walk through that fucking hospital, okay? The only fear monger that we've got going on here is this individual, all right? Let's just keep everything in perspective and not fall for the old okie dokie, okay? And it's not about, oh, look, she ended up getting sick and, you know, she can choke on her words and, you know, and blah, and we were right all along. It's not a pissing contest here, people. Okay? It's not a pissing contest. If people want to mutate into programmed robots where they're afraid to live life, literally, and then expect other people to jump on board and go into that Lego block, because it's like Lego being put together and then getting, fused, right to the point where you can't even pull off a piece. You got to use your teeth, and not only do you have to use your teeth to pull off the Lego, but you got to crack your teeth to do it too. Like, no, that's not. There is no quality of health care, okay, when it relates to that type of public services. Like I said, the Criminal Code of Canada doesn't allow public servants to bring in I don't want to say malpractice. That's just the easy word. But bring in, there's a word. We'll just say malpractice. It's not malpractice, but bring in abusive practice, right? And then say this is quality health care, right? There's nothing in the Criminal Code of Canada that allows a public servant to do that. But this is where we're at, through fear-mongering. Because a slow death, when you kill off the hippocampus so that eventually you forget to remember this information, is more accepting than a fast death or being murdered. Okay? You're either going to have a fast death, or you're going to be tortured and murdered to death. People choose the slow one. It's like tobacco. You're warned. If you smoke, you can get this, this, and this. If you don't smoke, you can still get those things, right? Tobacco is an addiction. I've been smoking 45 years plus. Okay? I'm almost 60. All right? So we're pushing 46 years here, people. I've been a heavy smoker for most of my life because of the stress in my life. Does that stop me from living my life? No, it doesn't. Okay? When I die because of whatever, I'll deal with it when that time comes. In terms of, well, you shouldn't have smoked all those years. Yeah, you're probably right. But, I worked hard. I did what I was supposed to do. And I wasn't a bad person. And if I had to do it all over again, well, obviously, I wouldn't have started smoking when I was 12 years old, hiding up in the hill with my friend, pretending that we were thinking that we were cool. And so that by the time I was 14, I was a full-time smoker, a pack a day. Think about it, okay? That was just the way it was in those days for some of us kids, because smoking was acceptable. In Uncle John's days, he used to tell me he'd go to the doctor's office. As a matter of fact, I remember being in the doctor's office myself as a child with those tall stand-up ashtrays, right, with the big, I have them, right, with the big colored glass ashtrays, right? And people would be sitting there smoking, waiting to be called to go into the doctor's office. I remember sitting in there with that happening. Uncle John remembered going to Safeway and people walking through the meat aisle with a cigarette hanging out over their mouth with smoking as they're going through the meat, deciding what they wanted to buy. Okay, so some of this stuff is being influenced. This is what I'm trying to tell you, okay? Just like I was influenced to smoke at an early age, whatever these individuals are doing today is the same situation. Only they have the union more entrenched into compliance, I guess you can say, to act out whatever it is that they're trying to implement large scale, which isn't necessarily for the benefit of society, because ultimately it's abusive, right? It's abusive to expect somebody to put on something on their face. If God wanted you to have gills, we'd have them, people. We'd see them. If something was supposed to be a gill over our face, like an actual gill, right? Where underneath, it filters whatever, because that's kind of what a face mask does. It's kind of like an imitation gill. You know how fish has gills? Only in this situation, it's kind of like this. If we were designed biologically to be that way, it would be there. By forcing people to go against biology, for suppositions, for fear-mongering, power grabbing, just all that kind of stuff, right? Is abusive. It's abusive, people. If you went home and your husband put a muzzle on you with leather and studs on it and made you wear that for 8 to 9 hours a day, the cops would come in and arrest him if you called foul and say it was being done against your will. So how is that any different than what's going on right now? How does it make sense to put children into that muzzle just because a government official said so, when that government official has absolutely no relation to you in your personal life as a human being? Right? You wouldn't let your husband do that to your child. You wouldn't let your husband, and I'm just saying husband because men are more aggressive and are more stronger to make it happen versus women having hissy fits trying to get it to happen, okay? In terms of the will, the strength of the human psyche, right? It's just like my landlady's son, that like, whoa, that kind of, put me into a coward mode and a boo-hoo mode, when in fact he's probably just worried about his mom. And it was a little displaced anger, right? But, if you wouldn't allow your husband to do it, or anyone else for that matter in your family household to do it, why would you let a complete stranger do it? Knowing intuitively, knowing in a cognitive sense, in terms of you can actually use your fucking brain and think about things in a reasonable manner, right? Right? Knowing how it feels because you've been doing it. And
I know last week as well, we clarified the provincial health officer order around the BC vaccine card, and we closed one of the loopholes that had been brought to our attention that was causing some concern.
Closing loopholes is just another form of gang stalking. It's closing the net. That's what fishermen do. They close the fucking net. They pull the net in, right? They plan where they're gonna catch, and then they can guide fucking whales with just nets and boats and and close those loopholes to get the whale where they want the whale. Let's just keep this in perspective, people. Okay?
For many of the sports organizations. It's important as we move.
Sports are healthy for you. Physical activity is healthy for you. Keeping active is healthy for you. It not only stimulates the brain, but it also exercises the muscles and everything else that goes on with the body, right? So, like, why would they want to interrupt that process if they were so concerned about people's health in general, people, okay?
Indoors. And as we align our vaccine card requirements, that we closed this loophole that allowed coaches.
Who's allowing that? The ones sitting in the children's hospital with their teeny weeny injured little children, forced to wear masks the minute they walk onto an infected property with a bunch of dirty feet walking around all over the place, right? People doing this, people doing that, blah, 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 blah.
Of youth sports or people who volunteered with youth sports not to be fully vaccinated. So now that is a requirement.
Okay, what was that? I gotta just shut up and listen.
That we closed this loophole that allowed coaches of youth sports or people who volunteered with youth sports not to be fully vaccinated. So now that is a requirement.
So all people who are volunteering their time because they just want to be connected with the community and see it prosper. I know that feeling. I know how that works, people. I've been trying to do that for 21 years. Now they're being told they can't do shit unless they get inoculated. That's what she's saying. So for all her bullshit with about, oh, well, this just has to do with the healthcare system, now they're going into children's sports. Or sports for the elderly, where volunteers come in and help throw the ball. Do you remember those days when they were throwing a ball? Literally throwing a ball at Uncle John, and Uncle John was blind, and then they asked him if he was having fun, and if he wasn't, why wasn't he? Well, I don't know. Why couldn't he have fun, people? It's not like he could catch a fucking ball that was being thrown at him, being that he was blind.
It is unfortunate that we needed to do this. As you know, we've continued to put an importance on stressing the importance of youth sports and making sure that we're minimizing the barriers around youth sports.
These people are not being held to account for nothing. Absolutely nothing. There are, last time I checked, 480,000 public union employees within the province, okay? Under their wing, in terms of the provincial government employs about 480,000 employees. That number, little more, little less, I'm not too sure. Those numbers are like from quite a few years back. Either or, we can just round it off at 520,000 public union employees within the provincial government alone, and that would include the municipals and all that type of thing, I would think, to some degree. Out of 5.6 million people. So there are 5 million people compared to 600,000 public union employees, and it's those 600,000 that basically run 5 million.
Sports, and initially we knew that most coaches and volunteers were vaccinated, but unfortunately some people were taking advantage of that not being required, and it has led to transmission. We have transmission that...
Where's show us? What, you can't because of privacy? You don't want to point out the criminal in the community even though you're criminalizing them? Well, if you're criminalizing them, why don't you expose them? Why don't you put them up on, what are those things with the people put their head in with their arms? So that the public can see who the criminal is in the society versus protecting their identities because, what, they're children or are they volunteers? Who are they protecting, people, by not showing this where she's saying that so-and-so infected so-and-so. Well, if so-and-so infected so-and-so and so-and-so, well, then put him in one of those fucking things since we're on a bloody witch hunt. Because that's what this is modern day witch hunting here, people. Only we're not hunting the witches. It's the witches who are doing the hunting, okay? I seen that with Shimei, people. I seen it with Uncle John, people. This system was in place long before we even got to this point. They're just building in new infrastructure, like that bathroom with that lighting. Like, that was completely, I don't want to say uncalled for, but that bathroom wasn't built for a normal physiological human being, okay? Because the light spectrum was just too suspicious in terms of there was nothing normal about it.
happened in a sports event where a number of teams came together, and some of the adults spread the virus between them, and that spread into
49
children who then
minutes.
brought it into schools.
I'll have to maybe do this
So
in
this
sections.
means we all need to take a step back and recognize the important role we play as adults in protecting children, particularly those who are too young to be vaccinated right now. So we have
This asinine people. I went to a fucking hospital. I came into contact with hundreds of people. Some of them like rubbing shoulders with me. Not even a fucking 12 inches away. Not even a foot away. And I was back to back with them. One here, one there, one over there, one over there. Tisha's over there. My kids running around. Andre running around. Alea Main running around. The baby sucking on Tisha's boob. Amari just laying up on the bed, having all these people fucking touch him. Like, this girl is this individual. She's not even a fucking girl. This individual is so full of fucking bullshit. Okay? Bullshit. What? This thing wants me to be completely paranoid, completely afraid to even approach the subject of hip surgery. Because if I do, I have to go in walking on, what is that called? Tulips and eggshells, tippy-toeing around all these individuals like I'm in a fucking maze, just so that I don't catch some boogeyman virus, okay? Just so that I can have some doctor tell me whatever, and then at the end of the day, have my grandson, after the fact, all come out, when it's all said and done, assuming that he even comes out of it, people, okay, there's a 10% chance that he die. No, sorry, 1% chance. But we're going to double check on that fucking number, okay? There's a 1% chance that he could die out of 100 kids facing what he's facing. There's a 10% chance that even though he doesn't feel pain now, he will for the rest of his life because of what they've done. That's a 10% chance. And if it gets to that point, you know they're going to want to go in and follow up on that other 10% chance, which brings it up to a 20% chance now, really, if you combine the two of them. So they can do their exploratory fucking surgeries to figure out what's causing the fucking pain, and that's assuming that he doesn't get infections at whatever percent ratio. Okay? What? If I didn't go and talk about that with the doctor in person, I would have been accused of negligence. But yet this individual is holding me hostage, and my family, and really all the workers, people. They're the victims too here, some of them, right? If not all of them, at least within my group. To whatever, I don't want to say rhetoric, but I'm not plastic. My family's not plastic. We're not made out of metal. We don't have freaking, what is that called? Gears running inside our bodies. We're biological entities that move and breathe and function and until poof, one day we're gone and nothing moves except us, right? And we're dead. Okay? So it's asinine. Because if that's the case, then I shouldn't be going to protect my grandson from this, whatever it is that she's fear-mongering on. The best thing that I could do for my grandson is just not go. Stay away from those environments, including, don't tell me I'm going to be better if you give me whatever you think you're going to give my family. Okay, when in fact that's not true. Okay, all right? My landlady is living proof of that, people. Okay? Okay, she's going to end up being an Uncle John here. I'll never stop talking about her. She'll go down in history as a brave woman. One of the first to go down. Okay? The thing is, how is she going down? Is she going down voiceless? Or is she going down swinging, having people fucking advocate? Because her life wasn't sacrificed in vain. She didn't die for nothing. She didn't die in vain. You know how people say that. You didn't die in vain. Your life wasn't sacrificed, right? I mean, ultimately, it boils down to the family in terms of, like John's family. They sacrificed John, people, for the money. Okay? Nobody fought down hard for Uncle John. The only thing they fought for was to steal his money. But I still fight for Uncle John and people like Uncle John. And now my landlady's in that pot with Uncle John and his friends. And I'm sure my landlady has her friends. Okay? This woman's not fighting for nobody or nothing. Because whatever she's got to say, okay, is a bunch of old okie dokie. All right? Because if that's the case, then I shouldn't even be going into a hospital environment under any fucking circumstances. Because it's a volatile, abusive, fucking germ-infected with their bottom of the feet, you know, whatever, with their fucking high traffic, freaking personnel and all this other shit and everything that she's all paranoid about. Okay, that's what she is. She is the representation of what a hospital is. Okay? I'm not saying that, right? But you get my point. I think. I hope.
Working very closely with Via Sport and the many leagues supporting youth sports around the province. And it was at their request and in discussions with them that we put in the requirement for those people who are now working with young children, whether it's as a volunteer, a coach, leading or supporting youth sports and activities, that you now must confirm proof of vaccination to continue in those roles, particularly as we move into indoor sports over the next few months. This requirement for proof of vaccination means we can keep these important youth programs safely going and keep our children safe. Last week as well,
Was Amari safe?
That booster vaccines...
Okay, was Amari safe? Who put Amari at risk? Me, because I took him to the hospital? Or all those people in that fucking room? Or what? Who? Like, I can only draw on people on what I know and what my experiences are and what I read and just that kind of stuff, right? Or hear, watch, or whatever, right? Or people tell me, okay, there's only so much that I can draw on. But, like, how could she possibly say the things that she's saying? It's so abstract. It's so out of touch with reality, because if you were to ask me that question, was Amari unsafe, considering the circumstances, listening to what I'm hearing, not about what I know, but listening to what I'm hearing, I would say yes. But based on what she's saying, it would be no. You see, that's the difference between living in a fucking fantasy and being paranoid and afraid to breathe versus getting on with your life, being responsible in terms of having an adult mind with reasoning, common sense, that kind of shit. Right? I don't want to wash my dishes because if I wash my dishes, I'll be putting my hands into dirty water. And if I put my hands into dirty water, I might infect myself with bacteria. And if I get some bacteria in a cut, right, I might get an infection. And if I get an infection, you know, it could get into my blood and give me blood poisoning. And if that happens, then I could die. So therefore, I'm never going to wash my fucking dishes. That's basically what she's saying, this individual. Okay, and if this is what this individual wants people to do. Unless, of course, you know, I mean, it's smoke and mirrors. It's smoke and mirrors, right, people? You see how I'm going to get banned from a hospital as I'm being told I have to go to a hospital based on what this individual fearmongers on. When clearly it's fear-mongering to rob people of living and experiencing life as a living, organic, breathing, whatever organism in the here and now, in the moment. If I was a paranoid individual, I would have told all those people to get the fuck out. Versus let them woo me to fool me. Versus let them practice to be the doctor that they wanted to practice to be. Versus being a little shit disturber and trying to confuse the situation by making the patient caregiver think about who this individual was as if she was the most important in the group. When in fact she shouldn't even have been there in terms of that person doing the cast. Absolutely no reason for her to be there. She was nothing more than a distraction. That's not what I went there for, people. But yet, this individual exposed my family to the danger that this individual is trying to protect me from. How does that make sense? But you see, nothing makes sense because that's what they do, right? That's how they harvest that loosh. They like that cortisol going. That's why when they do medical procedures, they're never concerned, or when they get them under that duty of care, they're never concerned about the emotional and the psychological and the spiritual well-being of the patient, right? They didn't care about John, psychological and all that, right? As a patient. Sure hell didn't care about Shemaine. Or fucking didn't care about Amari either, because they're just drooling at the bit. Waiting for the rule to come in where I can't come in. And then they get to keep them and continue to do what they want when they want. Without anybody witnessing, documenting it, or seeing the end result in terms of the official file, because this individual can just come up and say, oh, well, we have a little boy named Amari who died from the supposed, you know what, right? And therefore, let's ramp up that fear. As they target the next one, people.
Have been expanded to everybody on a program based on risk. And we know...
Again, who was at risk on November 1st? Them or us? Based on her formula, I would say, in their minds, they think it's them. But it could have came from anywhere because they're in contact with 1 million people. Well, not 1 million, but at least 1,000 people a day going through that hospital. Right? Day after day, different individuals where I'm forced to go into that environment. But I don't see it like a threat like she does. I just don't, people. I'm not a robot programmed to sell snake oil.
Know that for the most part, we started already with long-term care, with seniors in our community, with people who have compromised immune systems. And the data has also shown, as we've presented, that individuals who receive 2 doses of AstraZeneca have had a waning of protection from infection. Thankfully, they still have very strong, good protection for serious illness, but...
She can't guarantee shit, people. Why don't people know that you can write 1 million words and it can mean nothing? Absolutely nothing. For as good as you write it, for as much as you do it, I think the doctors that are going outside the box, that know the lingo, are writing, verbally, speaking, and they're realizing that the 1 million words that they write or speak is falling on deaf ears, no matter how smart they are and how correct they are.
Lower protection against infection. And as a result, people who receive 2 doses of AstraZeneca will be receiving invitations for their booster dose at 6 months. And this may be sooner than other healthy adults in the community where we know there's very good, strong protection that's lasting well. So those people who receive 2 doses...
No. You can still get sick with whatever it is that they're saying you can get sick with, because that's how they keep you on that line of the fear bandwagon.
Doses of AstraZeneca, you can expect to receive your invitation for a booster dose in the coming months, depending on how long it's been since you received your dose 2. And I will say the booster doses will be with an mRNA vaccine, and that combination, particularly a viral vector and an mRNA combination.
So now they're mixing it up again because they're still learning, people. What gives them the right to administer, I wanted to say garbage. I was thinking about that doctor that called it garbage. You know, sometimes the simplest, people like it simple, right? You don't need to write a million words. All you have to say is garbage. Right? You know?
Has been shown to be very effective and long-lasting.
How does she know that? I'm the one with long-lasting immunity. So much so that if I get a blood test, my doctors, they come and they, ooh, they want to know what's so special about me. How is that possible? They don't find too many people like me with lifelong immunity at age 60 to German measles. It really piques their interests.
Finally, we also will be clarifying a number of the other provincial health officer orders in the coming days.
And you know what the funny thing is? I remember when I was sick. I was just a little girl. They had me in a basement, like a basement area, right? And it had to be dark. I had to be in the dark, right? Because when you have German measles, they put you in the dark for a while, right? And I remember being in the bed. I remember the room. It was quite wide open. Well, it felt like a basement. I don't know where I was, but it was a big open room and whatever. And I was in the bed, and I had to stay there. I had to kind of be in the dark. And the window, the curtains, they were white curtains. They were white curtains, people, and they were pulled. And out of the curtains came these little characters. They were kind of like little cartoon characters. That's how my mind internalized that whole process. And they were peeking behind the curtain as I was basically forced to lay in bed so that my body could build lifelong immunity on the advice of a good doctor, people. On the advice of a good doctor.
First, the food and liquor serving premises order. We've heard from a number of different restaurants and food premises that they would like more clarification on the requirement and expectation for those at those premises that are what we're calling quick serve counter service, so the counter service only model. And although we are not requiring them to check,
they're rewriting societal interaction.
the BC vaccine card, there are expectations about numbers of people, about spacing and distances and barriers and other things.
There's that Lego. Put one block here, 1, 2, 3, put one block here, 1, 2, 3, put one block here, 1, 2, 3, 4, put a block here, 1, 2, 3, put a block here. Ultimately, we know that a lot of energy weapons are directed by a joystick. Just keep that in mind. I have it documented with energy weapons more than likely being controlled by a joystick in my yard, and definitely something flying through my basement. And I'm pretty sure I've been hit with them too.
That need to be implemented.
If they're going to go around me, they're going to eventually go through me, because that's part of the game, right? That's what it's all about. They're learning.
To ensure that those premises are safe as well.
I've got too long to
And
go.
additionally, we're working with the colleges, the regulated health professionals, to ensure that regulated health professionals in the community are also vaccinated. As you know, we have a mandatory program for healthcare workers in our health system, and this is working closely with the colleges, particularly physicians and nurses and dentists, to make sure that we are all protected, so that we protect ourselves, our colleagues, and our offices.
Because they're protecting themselves from people like me. They're protecting themselves from my family, even though they're the ones that are forcing themselves on us.
And the patients that we care for. As you know, we're working to protect those who are at highest risk, and I am grateful particularly to everybody who has, the millions of people throughout BC who are doing their part as well. It is your simple efforts of getting your COVID-19 and your influenza vaccination, staying home and away from others if you're feeling unwell, getting tested, cleaning your hands regularly, that will make all the difference. We have all made sacrifices.
She tries to make herself sound like a mother hen. Only sometimes though, right?
In this past almost 22 months, and we...
Yeah, 22 months, people. Basically. Not all of it, but if, good Lord, whoever sparked your life wanted you to have gills, you would have been born with gills.
have felt the impacts of COVID-19.
If you like being abused by your lover, where you seek out pain because that's sexually gratifying and that's how you live within the realm of your personal relationship with your lover, and you like that kind of shit, well, that's personal choice. But when you're being forced by it to do it by a stranger, that's assault.
It is doing these things now that help us get back to those important activities in our life and help us do it safely and mitigating the risk of this virus impacting our families, our loved ones.
No, whatever this individual is doing is disrupting my life and my family's life and is destroying our lives.
And those we don't know. It's with this compassion and care that we will get through this next few months as well, by being kind, being calm, and being safe.
And being sneaky. Woo to fool.
Thank you.
I'm tired.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. And
I got up too early.
In today's update, I'm going to address a number of subjects. Just see what they are. Be addressing the proof of vaccination requirements for the BC Public Service, the healthcare worker proof of vaccination requirement, which was brought into place last Tuesday for healthcare workers across the system. An update on booster shots in long-term care.
Just remember, for every person that they fire, they're easily replaced under non-binding union contract where these new and improved workers who more than likely won't speak English, more than likely come from backward thinking countries, more than likely will be unqualified, more than likely will jump on any bandwagon, whatever they're told to jump onto, just as long as they can keep their employment and, you know, build their self-esteem around the fact that they're a government employee, even though they're treated like shit, okay? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is just another form of union busting, okay, to break up those, you know, to push out, you know, faithful, I don't want to call them servants, but public servant, the ones that been there for 10, 15, 20 years, you know, on the cusp of, you know, getting a good pension, if they can just hang in there for a little longer, right? Government fires them, they, you know, they negate on pensions, and, you know, they forfeit, they have to, you know, let go, whatever it may be, people. This is union busting that's building in a unqualified workforce that's being imported through, I almost want to say, human trafficking measures.
An update on acute care capacity levels, and an update, the usual updates on surgical, and on
all relates to Amari. Now, I don't know what time it is. Maybe what I should do. I know this camera. Yeah, this is 7:28 in the morning. I got up at 4, and I'm just tired. Period. Right now. I almost feel like I need to coffee. I drink sugar. Ugh. I almost, because I'm not even halfway through this video and I really want to do this, right? While I'm still alive, while I still have a fucking chance to do it, right, people? Basically, because what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I'm actually experiencing, none of it matches up outside of, I can see the gang stalking, right? I can see it. Maybe you can't see it. I can see the red flags, right? I can see how I'm being set up for, you know, well, the rule is, yeah, well, the rule was, and you may think the rule is, and it probably is, but at the end of the day, you know, go into that bathroom and just really think about what the fuck is wandering in these freaking halls where, you know, the light spectrum kind of maybe shines a light on it, right? You know, maybe it shines a light on it, right? Like, I don't know. It's just, I don't want to turn this off yet. I have to start my day.
And on
But this is
contact
important.
tracing numbers. But before I begin all of that, I wanted to thank BC's
My life is being snuffed out here, people, in real time, okay? Just
Chief Coroner Lisa Lapointe for her report on
and so is my family's lives. Some of us faster than others.
the heat wave experienced this summer. The Coroner Service, of course, will complete its investigations through the beginning of 2022, and a death review panel will provide recommendations in the spring of 2022. As people will know, in the healthcare system, and the Chief Coroner reported through the period, principally the period around June the 28th, or June the 28th to July the 2nd, but also through that period that 595 people passing away, which is extraordinary. You will know that on June the 28th, during this unprecedented heat wave,
I don't know what he was
BC
referring
Emergency
to.
Health Services
525
received,
people died because of a
2,000
fire?
ambulance dispatches, which is the highest ever received.
What is he
in one
talking
day.
about?
The efforts of everyone
I
in the
heard that
healthcare
before,
system
and I
to respond
really
to the
couldn't
heat wave,
quite clue
including,
in
and especially
what he was
frontline
making
workers and those in
reference
public
to.
health, were remarkable.
Who
But the
died and
impacts,
why?
as we all know, as we see by today's report,
In June of
were
month,
tragic,
right?
and the loss of life devastating. It's vital that we learn from these events, and that's exactly
What
we
event
will
is he
do,
talking
and we'll be
about?
following very closely the independent review being conducted by the coroner. As you know, we're also beginning with that work already, in particular with our ambulance service. We announced new measures. We've already announced new measures to strengthen BC's ambulance service to ensure it's faster and more
As they're firing people.
responsive to British Columbians. It's a better place to work for paramedics and dispatchers that can meet changing demands and needs. From 2017, we've invested extraordinary amounts in BC EHS. With the exception of mental health and addictions, it's the area of healthcare that's received the most increase in support since 2017. Its annual budget's going from $424.25 million to $559.12 million a year. We're reinforcing ambulance operations with hundreds of new paramedic positions.
Where are they getting the paramedics from when they're firing them, people? I told you, they're just importing people randomly from these poor countries, setting them up with federal funds, the large majority of them, right? It's like human trafficking, right? And then they put them to work where they think they would do best for whatever role the government wants these individuals to play.
Including the 85 announced in mid-July, 30 new dispatchers,
Just because you have a certificate doesn't mean you're qualified.
22 new ambulances, with the dozens of rural and remote communities that are seeing an increase in service, particularly full-time paramedics. And we expect to fill these positions this month. Some are filled, the rest will largely be filled this month. These actions reflect our commitment to the health and safety of British Columbians and the ambulance paramedics they are counting on. We also know in order to manage heat waves, we must all work together on many core issues, from housing affordability and safety and infrastructure, income inequality, municipal supports and services, and of course, at the center of it all, climate change, on which BC is a world leader, but we must continue to work together. We are taking significant steps, extraordinary steps on all these fronts to prepare for future events. Dr. Henderson, Dr. Sarah Henderson of the BC CDC, we're leading our own review of these events, and with the Provincial Health Office has noted this is a 1 in 1,000 year event. It has now happened. It's no longer a 1 in 1,000 year event. It's a 1 in 1 year event.
What?
And we need to respond and become more resilient, not just as a health system.
Where does it say a 1 in 1,000 event?
I wanted to update you on the Public Service Agency's vaccinations several weeks ago. We told you of the coming requirement for all those employed by the BC Public Service to be vaccinated against COVID-19. The BC Public Service showed leadership and set an example for other employees by requiring all those employed by the BC Public Service to be vaccinated. Here's where the effort stands today. Employees who do not provide proof of vaccination or refuse to disclose their vaccination status by November 22nd will be considered unvaccinated. Public service employees who do not have at least one dose of the vaccine by November 22nd, where there is not an approved accommodation based on a medical condition or other protected grounds, will be placed on unpaid leave for 3 months. Partially vaccinated employees, those having received only one dose, may be offered alternative work arrangements and will be required to provide proof of vaccination, full vaccination, within 35 days of having received their first dose. Partially vaccinated employees who are not fully vaccinated within that timeline will be placed on unpaid leave. Employees who are still unvaccinated after the 3-month unpaid leave may be terminated. This is a necessary step to support vaccination and help protect all our workplaces and communities from COVID-19. We know the vast majority of people are already vaccinated with at least one dose.
So, the province of British Columbia, Canada, I don't know what I'm going to do here. It's 1 hour and 21 minutes. And it's going to suck up my hard drive. And I have to transfer files. That's how much it sucks up my hard drive. The province of British Columbia, Canada, is putting my family at risk by overstimulating and frightening the healthcare workers that I'm being basically forced to come into contact with because of the fear-mongering that's being wooed to the public. Okay? So in other words, the quality of care under that duty of care is lowered. It's not at its optimal capabilities in terms of, I'm not dealing with sound-minded individuals. I'm dealing with people where the cortisol in their brains are going like this, as that is just kind of like making the brain dry up. Even though they can function, it's like being a functioning addict. Okay? If we can have functioning addicts, we can have functioning healthcare workers that are clearly suffering from health issues, whether they're mental because of that in the brain, or whether they're physical because of the shrinking of the brain, not to mention what's happening to the rest of the body under the orders or the rules or the guidelines of what this fear-mongering is bringing to the general population.
Dose. Over 12, that number is 89.9% today. And I thank all public servants and all British Columbians who've made the decision to get vaccinated. I also want to thank everyone who works in the BC Public Service for the work they've done over the last 2 years, showing the highest level of professionalism.
Complete hypocrisy. It's what you call asinine. Don't fire me and then at the same time tell me that you appreciated what I did for you.
And dedication during these unprecedented and
no, there is no unprecedented times other than I'm being set up for murder, to be murdered. It's premeditated murder through gang stalking techniques.
times. With respect to mandatory vaccinations for healthcare workers, I want to bring you an update as to the numbers there.
I wonder how many of those will die in vain and nobody will say nothing. Absolutely nothing.
We have 127, excluding long-term care and assisted living, 127,448 total healthcare workers in BC. That's people who worked at least one shift in the last 3 months. As of today, 122,000, or as of, should I say, yesterday at midnight, 122,059, or 95.8%, are fully vaccinated. 2,064, or 1.6%, have received one dose, and 3,325.
But yet, my family is the threat. 220,000 individuals who have been inoculated with an experimental analog.
Or 2.6%, are not yet vaccinated and on unpaid leave. By a health authority, just to put that in context, and there has been some improvements, as you'll note, in these numbers over the last number of days.
Sorry, I'm tired.
With across the health authorities, unvaccinated numbers in Fraser Health are 2%. That's 587 employees. In Northern Health, 4%, or 320 employees. Vancouver Coastal Health, 2%, or 478 employees. Interior Health Authority.
You see, they can afford to lose 478 employees in Fraser Health, because by bringing in families 7, 9, 10 at a time and setting them up in these old bungalows, right, to prop up the mortgages to keep the economy going, right, those are the ones that are going to be drawn upon in order to fill those 400 and whatever it was positions, to which they will more than likely be unqualified. And just because maybe they are, I guess you could say, educated and were educated in their country, it doesn't mean that they're not biased, prejudiced, racist. Maybe they were a poor student and just got a go pass and got credentials that aren't necessarily legit. Or maybe they're just paid crisis actors. Who knows? All we know is that whatever's filling those spots isn't coming out of high school. Okay, in other words, they didn't go to school for it, people. Like, what? They're hiring the ones that are graduating from college to fill these positions? Is that what they're doing? I mean, it's bad enough that they're union busting in a kind of a way, but are they creating employment for the ones coming out of the colleges and the universities by firing people that are already employed in those positions because they can't create new positions to employ the younger generation coming up through the ranks? Or are they simply going to take that gene pool of imported immigrants, a Maj Podge of whatever, and then just slap them in there so that they can run around from patient to patient to patient saying, do you want your calcium pill chewed? Do you want your calcium pill whole or crushed? I'm the pill dispenser. How would you like it, Mr. Duncan? Do you want your calcium pill whole, or do you want it crushed? Either or, you have to take it, because we're not going to tell you it's a calcium pill. We're just going to give it to you before lunch, or at least at lunchtime, because you have to eat it with food. Otherwise, it could cause problems, right? So eat your calcium pill either whole or crushed before you have lunch. Because at the end of the day, we're going to sedate you and put you to sleep. As we cut backroom deals. I don't want to say the devil, but it seems so.
5%. Or 1,018 employees. Providence Healthcare, 1%, or 104 employees and staff. And in Vancouver Island Health, it's 2%, or 480. Again, these are people who across the board who worked at least one shift in the last 3 months. So it doesn't represent FTEs, but it is obviously a significant challenge. Principally, it's been a challenge in the Interior Health Authority. You'll know that this week, 2 operating rooms are down in order to respond to the staffing challenges involved. That will be reduced to 1 next week, and we hope all will be restored in 2 weeks. That has a real impact there. There's some impact on lab times and responses. In a community such as Karamias, where a large percentage of a relatively small group of people in the facility there mean that hours are being adjusted in Karamias. None of this is desirable. It's necessary. And Interior Health and all of the staff in Interior Health in particular
We have to hear what he's saying.
doing an excellent job in responding to these circumstances. With respect to long-term care, as of yesterday, 93% of facilities.
That's what the doctor mentioned. He said that operating rooms aren't as available as they used to be.
Of long-term care and seniors assisted living facilities in the province. 93% of facilities have received their...
Now, if he's an honest, true doctor, that would be very upsetting for him, especially if he was coming into contact with children who really, 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 really needed it. And apparently he does. So on a humanistic level, I would think that would be disturbing for him. I would like to think that it would be disturbing for him, and therefore, he'd be more apt to be on my side of the fence versus waiting for the next rule so that he can go under attack and turn his back on us.
Booster doses to date for residents.
Just so he can keep his job and maybe, just maybe, get an operating room. So he can go back to the good old days and just being a doctor. Right?
That's 4.
Versus something mutating under a mask in denial that he's killing off his fucking hippocampus. Not to mention shriveling up his brain with common sense. And he's supposed to operate on my grandson? Okay, as if that doesn't put my grandson at risk to further injury because of the long-term damage that the doctor is experiencing at the hands of Dr. God, Dr. Death, and her fucking cohorts. Okay? How does that fall under the duty of care when you're dealing, I don't want to say with a defective doctor, or because he's not defective, that's the thing. He's supposed to be an experienced doctor, and he is. But his health is being affected by poor policies that's putting him at risk to mistakes, to make mistakes, to make more mistakes. But you see, it's just a disabled child that he's operating on. So if a mistake is made, it's kind of like a Fauci kind of thing. We're just learning, right? We have to go that real dirty fucking mile in order to get the real results of what happened. And in terms of let's, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares what we do as long as we get to see the gore and the goo and, the suffering and the pain and just to really figure out what the fuck it is that we're learning.